Welcome to Declassified Deep Dive, where unredacted files reveal hidden truths. Let's uncover the secrets. I'm your host, Raj, and each week we explore a new secret deep dive.
Okay, so get this. Imagine finding out, like, you're in a CIA file.
Oh, wow.
And not for, like, doing anything illegal,
Yeah.
but just for voicing your opinions.
Right.
You know? Attending a rally, supporting a cause, everyday stuff. Pretty chilling, right?
It is. And, for thousands of Americans during the Vietnam War era, this wasn't like a hypothetical scenario.
You're right.
It was reality.
Yeah, we're diving deep into Operation C.A.O.S, a covert CIA program that ran from 1967 to 1974.
Wow.
Targeting American citizens, specifically civil rights activists and Vietnam War opponents. We've got declassified CIA documents, articles dissecting the program's impact, and even testimonies from those who lived through it.
Yeah, this collection of sources really paints a vivid picture of a time when the lines between national security and individual freedoms blurred in a very unsettling way.
So was this justified in the name of national security or a blatant overreach? Let's find out first. Paint the scene for us. What was going on in the late 1960s that led to something like Operation C.A.O.S?
Okay, so picture that the Cold War is in full swing. The Vietnam War is escalating, and social movements like the Civil Rights Movement are gaining momentum.
Yeah.
There was widespread anxiety and suspicion.
Right.
With the government fearing communist influence and threats to national security.
A real pressure cooker of a time. So how did President Lyndon B. Johnson fit into all of this? I know he was initially quite concerned about the anti-war protests.
Right. In 1967, Johnson,
Yeah.
already wary of the FBI's domestic surveillance program, COINTELPRO,
Right.
tasked the CIA with assessing foreign influence on these protests.
Okay.
This ultimately led to the creation of the Special Operations Group, or SOG.
Okay.
Within the CIA, their sole purpose managed Operation C.A.O.S.
And then comes Nixon.
And things ramp up significantly.
Uh-huh.
Nixon, known for his deep suspicion of dissent, pushed the CIA to broaden the scope of surveillance.
Wow.
What began as an investigation into potential foreign links quickly transformed into a sweeping program monitoring various domestic groups and individuals.
Hold on. Even within the CIA, there were folks who weren't on board with this, right?
Absolutely. Some officials questioned the legality and morality of targeting American citizens based solely on their political beliefs. They saw it for what it was, a dangerous overreach of power.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty. How did the CIA actually carry out this surveillance?
Well, they started with good old-fashioned physical surveillance agents, followed individuals, photographed meetings, classic spy stuff.
Right, like a scene straight out of a Cold War thriller.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then it gets more intrusive.
Okay.
Think phone tapping, intercepting mail, even accessing international call records. They were essentially building a web of connections, trying to identify any hint of foreign influence.
They weren't just watching, they were listening too, right?
Oh yes, they bugged meeting places to capture conversations verbatim.
Wow.
Imagine the chilling feeling of knowing your private discussions were being recorded.
That's straight up creepy, but it gets even more unsettling, right? Didn't they infiltrate these groups too?
They did. CIA operatives posed as members of targeted groups, attending meetings, gathering intel. Even trying to disrupt activities from within this tactic was particularly insidious because it involved a deep betrayal of trust.
Okay, this is where I think it gets really personal for our listeners, who are some of the high-profile individuals targeted.
Prepare to be shocked. The list includes Martin Luther King Jr. himself.
Wow.
The CIA was fixated on his anti-war stance and the influence he held, and even after his assassination, they continued to target Coretta Scott King.
Wow, they went after Dr. King. What possible justification could they have had?
Their reasoning, whether genuine or a convenient cover, was always about national security and uncovering foreign influence. But critics saw it as a blatant attempt to silence dissent and neutralize influential figures who challenged the status quo.
And it wasn't just Dr. King, right? Who else was on their radar?
They also targeted Bella Abzug,
Okay.
a congresswoman and staunch advocate for women's rights, as well as Ron Dellums, another congressman and vocal critic of the Vietnam War. Even George Meany, the president of the AFL-CIO, was under their watchful eye.
So even elected officials, labor leaders, no one was safe from these intrusions.
It seems not.
Yeah.
And that brings us to a crucial question.
Okay.
Did this massive invasion of privacy actually yield any results? Did they find the foreign influence they were so desperately seeking?
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat now. What happened next?
Well, you'd think with all the resources and manpower poured into Operation C.A.O.S., they'd have uncovered something substantial. But
Right.
it turns out their legacy is one of failure.
Wait, they found nothing after all that spying?
Despite years of intense surveillance infiltrating groups and compiling thousands of files on American citizens, Operation C.A.O.S failed to uncover any significant evidence of foreign control over domestic political movements.
Wow, talk about a swing and a miss.
Right.
So how did this whole thing finally come crashing down?
Enter Seymour Hersh,
Oh, yeah.
the legendary investigative journalist.
Right.
In 1974, his groundbreaking expose in the New York Times, huge CIA operation reported in U.S. against anti-war forces, other dissidents in Nixon years, blew the lid off. Operation C.A.O.S. It sent shockwaves through the nation, revealing the extent of the CIA's domestic spying.
Hersh the man's a journalistic hero. I can only imagine the public outcry when they found out they were being spied on by their own government.
The outrage was immense.
Yeah.
It further eroded public trust in the government, already shaken by the Watergate scandal.
Right.
Remember, that also involved former CIA officers.
Right. Talk about adding fuel to the fire. So what happened next? Did anyone face consequences for this massive overreach?
The pressure for accountability was immense. In 1975, the Rockefeller Commission, led by Vice President Nelson Rockefeller, was formed to investigate CIA activities, especially those like Operation C.A.O.S.
So this commission was tasked with figuring out if the CIA was playing by the rules, right?
Exactly. They conducted extensive hearings, reviewed countless documents, and their investigation was thorough and ultimately damning.
And what was the verdict? Did they think Operation C.A.O.S was justified?
Not at all. The commission concluded that Operation C.A.O.S was illegal.
Oh, wow.
They found that it grossly overstepped legal boundaries, violated civil liberties, and to top it all off, failed to produce any meaningful evidence of foreign control.
So it was a complete failure legally. And from an intelligence perspective, it makes you wonder, what was the point of it all?
It's a question that still resonates today.
Yeah.
But what's important is that the fallout from Operation C.A.O.S led to some critical changes.
Okay, tell me there's a silver lining to this whole mess. What kind of changes came about?
One of the most significant outcomes was the creation of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA, in 1978.
I've heard of FISA.
Yeah,
It basically put some much-needed regulations on domestic surveillance, right?
exactly. FISA was an attempt to balance national security interests with the protection of civil liberties. It aimed to prevent future abuses like Operation C.A.O.S by establishing a legal framework for conducting surveillance on American citizens in cases of suspected foreign intelligence activities.
Okay, but laws are only as good as their enforcement. What about oversight? Did anything change there?
You're hitting on a crucial point. As a direct result of Operation C.A.O.S and other surveillance scandals, permanent congressional committees were established to oversee intelligence activities.
So these committees were essentially created to keep the CIA and other intelligence agencies in check, right? Making sure they operate within the law.
Precisely. They have the power to investigate potential wrongdoing, hold hearings, and demand accountability from intelligence agencies.
It seems like Operation C.A.O.S, even though it was a failure in finding what it set out to find, had a lasting impact on how we think about surveillance and the balance between national security and individual freedoms.
Absolutely. It served as a stark warning about the dangers of unchecked government power and the need for robust oversight mechanisms to protect our rights.
Now, before we move on, you mentioned Rosie Castro earlier.
Right.
Let's bring it back to her story and those activists in San Antonio.
Yeah.
It must have been incredibly unsettling to live under that kind of suspicion.
I can't even imagine. Remember that article you brought from the San Antonio Metro?
Yeah.
Rosie Castro, a prominent activist in the 1960s and 70s, and mother of Julian Castro, suspected she and her fellow activists were being watched.
And she was right. The CIA files later confirmed that Chicano activists, especially those who supported Martin Luther King Jr. or Cesar Chavez, were targeted as part of Operation C.A.O.S. They were seen as potential threats.
It's a stark reminder of how pervasive the surveillance was, targeting anyone who challenged the status quo. What's particularly chilling, according to the article, is how Rosie Castro describes people suddenly appearing overly interested in their movement.
Classic infiltration tactics, right? Plant someone within the group to gather information, sow discord.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She also recalls photographers with unusually sophisticated equipment for the time, adding to their suspicions to know that their every move was being monitored and documented. It must have created an atmosphere of constant fear and distrust.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just the CIA. The article mentions that Congressman Joaquin Castro Rosie's son, along with other members of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, have been pushing for the FBI to release their files on the surveillance of the Latino civil rights movement.
Which brings up an interesting point.
Yeah.
According to an article in the San Francisco Chronicle, the FBI has been much less transparent than the CIA when it comes to releasing these documents.
So there's still a lot we don't know about the full extent of this surveillance.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
The FBI has essentially stonewalled requests for information, making it difficult to piece together their role in all of this.
So where does this leave us? What's the takeaway for our listeners? What should they be thinking about after this deep dive?
Yeah, it's wild to think that something like Operation C.A.O.S,
Yeah.
born out of the Cold War anxieties,
Yeah.
still has so much relevance today. It makes you wonder, what are the lasting implications?
You're right. It's a story that resonates deeply, especially now in an age where technology has, supercharged surveillance capabilities.
It's almost like a cautionary tale from the past, reminding us of the dangers of unchecked power.
So what exactly should our listeners be taking away from all of this? I mean, beyond the fact that the CIA spied on its own citizens, of course.
I think the core issue here is that enduring tension between national security and individual freedoms.
Right.
Operation C.A.O.S throws it into sharp relief.
Right.
How do we as a society find that balance?
Yeah.
How do we protect ourselves from legitimate threats
Right.
without sacrificing our essential liberties?
Right, because no one's arguing that national security is unimportant, but where do we draw the line? That seems to be the million-dollar question that keeps coming up, especially after events like 9/11 and the rise of global terrorism.
Exactly. Operation C.A.O.S reminds us that we can't just blindly accept security measures at the cost of our freedoms.
Right.
It's about being informed, engaged, and questioning whether those measures are truly necessary and proportionate.
It also makes you think about the importance of transparency and accountability from our government. Operation C.A.O.S was shrouded in secrecy, operating outside the bounds of legal oversight. It took brave whistleblowers and investigative journalists like Seymour Hersh to bring the truth to light.
And that's a battle that continues today. We've seen more recent examples like the NSA's mass surveillance programs revealed by Edward Snowden.
Right.
These revelations sparked huge debates about the extent of government power in the digital age. How much access should they have to our data? What safeguards are in place to prevent abuse? These are questions we need to keep asking.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers, but Operation C.A.O.S serves as that powerful historical precedent. It's a stark reminder that we can't afford to be complacent when it comes to surveillance and our right to privacy.
I couldn't agree more. The lessons of Operation C.A.O.S are as relevant today as they were back then. We must be vigilant in defending our privacy and civil liberties.
Right.
We can't take those freedoms for granted because, as we've seen, they can be eroded slowly, subtly, if we're not paying attention.
So what can our listeners do? What's the call to action here?
It starts with awareness.
Right.
We need to educate ourselves about the issues, understand how surveillance technologies are being used, and know our rights. And then we need to hold our elected officials accountable. Demand transparency, support legislation that protects our privacy, and speak out against policies that overreach.
Engage, be informed, and don't be afraid to raise your voice. It seems that's the key takeaway here.
Absolutely.
That's it for our deep dive into Operation C.A.O.S. It's been a fascinating and, at times, unnerving journey.
It certainly has. It's a reminder that history isn't just about the past. It's about understanding the present and shaping the future.
And with that, we leave you to ponder the enduring legacy of Operation C.A.O.S. and its implications for the world we live in today. Until next time, stay curious and keep diving deep.